On today's show, who is a part of the next wave of Capitals players?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the next wave of Capitals players. It's an interesting position that the Capitals find themselves in, is that they see change is on the horizon. As we know, we have Alex Ovechkin on the team this year, the following year, and then he could very well decide to hang it all up. Who are going to be the faces of the future for the Capitals? I'll talk about that a little bit later. I'll talk about the offense and what offensive players will be a part of the Capitals' future. A little bit later after that, I'll talk about blue line players. Listen, John Carlson has been a big piece of the Capitals' blue line for years, but who is going to be on the blue line after he hangs up the skates? And then in the final segment, we'll talk about the net-minding position and who is going to be in net for the Capitals in years to come. But just to get it going here, the Capitals do find themselves in this interesting position, a position that they haven't been in quite some time. For the longest time, it was Alex Ovechkin and Nick Backstrom and Oshie and Wilson and these kind of guys. But we, for the first time in a long time, see change on the horizon. Like I spoke of there, that we know that we have Alex Ovechkin under contract for this season and the following season. And then there's going to be a whole lot more questions. And for the Capitals, last season was the first time in quite some time that they made strides, bigger strides in a younger direction. For many years here, it seems like they tried to squeeze as much juice as they possibly could out of that 2018 Stanley Cup team. But then that has run dry. The well has run dry on that team and that roster, as many of those players are no longer on the team. Backstrom stepped away from the hip resurfacing procedure that didn't respond. TJ Oshie with his back problems. Kuzi dealt out of town. That there is not a lot of those players left on the team. And that is ultimately what the Capitals tried to do. They tried to retool on the fly. So this guy got moved out. I'm going to put this guy in. Change was staring them squarely in the face, and they looked in the other direction for many years. But last season, when things didn't go according to plan, Spencer Carberry mentioned as much as the team was sketched out a certain way that he was going to have Backstrom and Oshie and Kuzi. Well, guess what? By the end of the season, a lot of those players weren't here or they were injured, and the Capitals were forced to make big decisions. Lapierre, for example, took on a bigger role than I think that he was scheduled for. McMichael took huge steps forward. We got a chance to get a look at Scarbosa. We got a chance to see a look at McElrath and different players, younger players that we probably necessarily wouldn't have had a chance to look at had things gone according to the script. But it's a good thing, all things considered. I think the Capitals were forced to make a change, and that is where they're at right now, that they're kind of getting primed for what is on the horizon. It's not the thing that's many, way many miles away. It's right on the horizon. We have 2 years left before Alex Ovechkin hangs up the skates. And then I think you will start to see a pretty big change. A lot of those players, I think they already have in-house with a draft and playing for the Bears, that kind of thing, and development. But ultimately, who are going to be those future faces? The Capitals find themselves needing to undergo a rebuilding phase in the future, while they are currently focused on supporting Alex Ovechkin's pursuit of the all-time goals record. They will eventually need to address the patchwork efforts made since their 2018 Stanley Cup win in order to maintain competitiveness. And you definitely saw this past summer. Former GM BMAC did make some big moves. PLD, Mangiapane, Roy, Chikrin, Logan Thompson. And these were moves that in some cases were made because Nick Backstrom and TJ Oshie are on the LTIR. It freed up some money. Otherwise, I don't think they would have been as aggressive. Currently, the Capitals prospects pipeline shows promise with high-quality talent such as Ryan Leonard and Andrew Cristall. Despite Henrik Slop moving beyond prospect status, there is still considerable depth in the pipeline. Additionally, goaltenders Clay Stevenson and Hunter Shepard have shown promise in the minors, and I will drill down a little bit more on the netminders in the third segment. However, it's evident that the team lacks the necessary pieces for a competitive run, and that's what many people are saying. I'm not saying that is the case, but that is the feeling. I kind of take a look at this team, I guess, not subconsciously taking a look at this team with Capitals colored glasses on, that I think that the things are going to be okay. But it has me slightly troubled that when I listen to Elliot Friedman and I listen to a lot of these premier insiders, that they don't see the Capitals doing great things this season. I hope that I'm right and they're wrong. Don't get me wrong. But what are they seeing that I am not seeing? But so talking about that, it's evident the team lacks the necessary pieces. While fans are eager to witness Ovechkin's remarkable achievements, the Capitals will eventually need to transition alongside him once he moves on. The transition will likely require a swift and comprehensive rebuilding effort, but it doesn't have to. I think that, you take a look at Jacob Vrana, a lot of people thought it could be Cristall and Miroshnichenko, that it seems like to an extent that they kind of pumped the brakes on going a lot younger. The fact that they decided to go with Jacob Vrana instead of Cristall or Miroshnichenko, but I still think that we're much closer to that transition than we were before. And I think that a lot of the transition ultimately will take place before Ovechkin decides to hang up the skates. The team's greatest strengths lie in their formidable offensive skills, with players like Leonard, Cristall, and Ivan Miroshnichenko showcasing exceptional abilities. Additionally, the presence of creative defender Cole Hutson adds depth to their lineup. However, the Capitals lack a strong offensive right-handed blue liner, which is a potential weakness. While Hutson excels on the left side, the team may benefit from securing an impactful defender in the upcoming 2025 draft to bolster their defensive lineup. And I do think that it is a work in progress. But in this first segment, we're going to talk about the offense. Ryan Leonard, of course, is going to be the biggest face of this team next year. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say it. He is going to be the guy on that top line, right wing. I think that Andrew Mangiapane will play with the Capitals one season, and then he'll be on to the next one as the Capitals have a better talent in Ryan Leonard. Ryan Leonard, that right wing from Boston College, was drafted 8th overall in the first round of the 2023 NHL draft. Leonard has an outstanding season as one of the top scorers in the NCAA, playing for the dominant Boston College Eagles. He scored 31 goals and 60 points, tying for 4th in the NCAA in scoring. His impressive performance placed him just a few points behind Will Smith, who finished 1st in the nation with 71 points. Leonard, a product of the USA Hockey National Team Development Program, has excelled in numerous international tournaments and was even selected to represent the Senior World Championship team in May. While many believe he is NHL ready, myself included, Leonard made the decision to continue his development at Boston College, aiming to secure a 2nd consecutive gold at the World Juniors and pursue a national college title. Listen, I understand that he's a younger man and necessarily my thoughts are not his thoughts. If I was him, I'd be like, I want a piece of that big pie known as the NHL, the money, the fame, and all that goes along with it. But he doesn't have my goals. His goal is to achieve on the world stage and to help Boston College win a title. Hey, that's his prerogative. The next player, of course, is Andrew Cristall. And I thought that this very well could be the season for Andrew Cristall. Now, when you take a look at it, that was me looking at it kind of, overly optimistically in the regard that they didn't want to screw up his entry-level contract, and they didn't want to. They're in a difficult position because he couldn't have played more than 10 games or that would have been interfered with. And ultimately, were the Capitals all in on Cristall this season? Now, if the Capitals had decided to push all their chips in and say, we want to take a look at Cristall this entire season, that would have been a different thing. But I think they did the right thing. He went back to the Kelowna Rockets. He can work on his game a little bit more. Next season will be the season for Andrew Cristall on the Caps. I really do believe it. A 19-year-old left winger from Kelowna WHL was selected 40th overall in the second round of the 2023 draft. When Cristall is at the top of his game, he stands out as the most skilled player on the ice. That was evident. He has a really high hockey IQ and made great progress in his skating. One of the things he needs to work on is bulking up so he doesn't get pushed off the puck quite as easily. He stands out as the most skilled player regardless of the competition. His offensive performance is multifaceted, excelling both as a shooter and a playmaker. He has remarkable ability to position himself and his teammates for scoring opportunities and effectively communicates with them to ensure they are in sync. His impressive tally of 71 assists this year speaks to the exceptional vision and playmaking skills. Cristall's puck handling abilities are nearly elite, showcasing creativity and agility under pressure, allowing him to maneuver past even the most formidable opponents, standing at only 5'10" and not being particularly a strong skater, even though we saw that he has taken steps forward in that. He does face some physical limitations, but with improvement in this area, he has the potential to excel in the NHL. Again, I do believe it. I liked what I saw from Andrew Cristall this season. I think that there was a lot of tough questions that Coach Spencer Carberry and the decision makers, Chris Patrick, about who was going to make the roster. I think that Cristall was a lot closer than we all think. The other player, Ivan Miroshnichenko, of course, who is right there, next level, ready to take it to the next level, to join the Capitals for a full season. He's right there. A 20-year-old left winger playing for Hershey in the AHL was drafted at 20th overall in the first round in 2022. Despite facing health challenges, Miro had a successful first year in North America. He contributed 6 points in 20 games with the Caps and played a key role in Hershey's second consecutive Calder Cup championship, tallying 12 points in 20 postseason games. His strong performance towards the end of the season is expected to boost his confidence as he heads into his second year in the U.S. While there's no rush to promote him to the NHL, it's anticipated that he will play around 20 games with Washington to face tougher competition and then spend the rest of the year in Hershey to maximize his playing time. I think that's a good idea for him. That was my thought. That I think that we know that injuries are going to be a part of this team. Do you have a plan if your team is facing injury, or are you going to fall flat on your face? The Capitals are in an excellent position as they have options. So a good position. I feel confident about the future of the Capitals. I really do. And I'm almost kind of chomping at the bit, just waiting for it to all happen. I want to see Alex Ovechkin catch and pass Wayne Gretzky, of course, but I'm almost ready to turn the page and get ready for what is next for the Capitals. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the future faces of the blue line. Listen, John Carlson can't play forever. Who are those faces going to be? I'll discuss coming up. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And listen, guys, there is a lot of football that's being played on any given Sunday or Monday or Thursday. And some of the games you're probably really into, like the Commanders or maybe the Ravens. But maybe it's a weekend when your team's not playing and you're like, I'm not that interested in this game. Open up the FanDuel app, and all of a sudden, those games got that much more exciting. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day, make sure and join the Locked On Capitals Insiders. There is going to be exclusive video, short-form podcasts, all of those kind of things. Just check out the link in the show description. All right, in this next segment here, we're going to talk about the future on the blue line for the Capitals. As we know that John Carlson is a guy that routinely played between 25 in 30 minutes. Well, guess what? He's not getting any younger, and that kind of play is not sustainable for either John Carlson or the Capitals. So who is going to be the future faces of the Capitals blue line? Well, one of those players, Cole Hutson, a left-handed defenseman, was drafted 43rd overall in the second round in 2024 from Boston University. Known for his entertaining style of play, Hutson was recognized as the top defenseman at the U18s after leading all defensemen in points. He holds the title of all-time USNTDP scoring leaders in the position. While his defensive flaws and occasional exhibits excessive puck handling, Hutson's potential remains significant. Similar to his older brother Lane, he possesses exceptional high hockey IQ and can outmaneuver opponents with ease. His shot was shown improvement in terms of accuracy and overall past the past 2 years. So he has taken steps forward. Again, I think that he is probably a little bit further out than some of the players I'm going to talk about, but those are the future faces. And like I talked about, this team is looking for a rebuild at some point. I do think that Cole Hutson fits into the long-term plans for the Capitals. But that's the big thing. Despite similarities with his brother, Cole's slightly larger physical stature sets him apart. The question remains whether he can overcome criticism similar to his brother Lane in the coming years. And that's part of it, is you're not going to be perfect right out of the gate, but that is why there is these development leagues. You're playing in AHL, the ECHL, whatever the case might be, that by the time you're ready to go in the NHL, you should be a premier player. And I have no doubt that in time that he will be quite a dynamic blue liner. So keep your eyes on Cole Hutson. That is for sure. The other player I'm going to talk about here next is a player that should be quite familiar to Capitals fans, as he is a player I've talked about here for quite some time, and that is Ryan Chesley. Chesley is a 20-year-old right-handed defenseman from the University of Minnesota, where he played in the NCAA. He was drafted 37th overall in the second round in 2022. Chesley's standout performance came during the World Juniors, where he contributed to 4 points in 7 games, helping Team USA secure a gold medal. Despite only recording 8 points in 39 games with the Golden Gophers, Chesley excelled in a shutdown role on the team. His scoring ability should not be underestimated, as nearly half of his points in his draft season came from goals. So a bit of an upside there for him as well. Definitely a part of the Caps' future. His scoring ability should not be underestimated. While offensive production isn't his primary focus, his defensive prowess and confidence in patrolling his own zone make him a valuable asset to the Caps. Chesley is known for being the team's best transition defender and is currently in a favorable stage of development. Although there's room for improvement in terms of puck carrying, his overall performance indicates a promising future with the team. I would like to see a longer look with him on the team as well. I know that he has faced some setbacks, but I think that he is definitely going to be a big piece. And one of the players that I really want to see what he's going to look like on the bigger stage. And another player that has been one that I've talked about for quite some time since the 2021 draft is Vincent Iorio. He is a guy that has been bit by the injury bug, and oftentimes it has derailed his opportunity with the big team. Iorio, a 21-year-old defenseman hailing from Hershey, AHL, was selected 55th overall in the second round of the 2021 draft. Known for his imposing physical presence on the ice, Iorio stands at an impressive 6'3", allowing him to utilize his long reach to gain an advantage in puck battles and deliver impactful hits. In the previous season, he demonstrated his offensive capabilities by tallying 14 points in 60 AHL games, showcasing improvement from the 22-23 production. Furthermore, Iorio focused on refining his defensive game, emphasizing consistency in his own zone and adopting a more cautious approach to pinching. So he has definitely taken steps forward. I know that when I first saw him, even back then, I was pretty impressed, but a little bit raw. He has definitely taken some steps forward, which contributed to a slower pace that suited his style. The adjustment allowed him to thrive and is expected to bolster his performance in the upcoming season. With these attributes and developments, it is anticipated that Vincent will be competing for increased playing time in the bottom pairing over the next 2 years. And again, I think that, like I talked about, the blue line is in transition. Some of these players that are on this team will not be here next year. What's the long term for Chychrun? We don't really know about all of that. And then TVR, he is a player that I thought could potentially be on the move, that I think that there's probably more viable options, maybe options in-house. So I think that what we see out on the ice, we shouldn't, in our mind circle that is going to be the final lineup here for years to come. I think it is the answer for the right now. But let's see how these players play out. I mean, take a look at Ethan Bear last year. The Capitals were so excited to see Ethan on this team, and guess what happened? He didn't really perform quite the way that we had hoped. So that is why it's important to have these younger players in the wings to step up. Again, injuries. Injuries are a thing I cannot overstate enough, is that we know that this team is going to face injuries. And you take a look at a couple seasons ago when John Carlson took that puck off the melon and missed a pretty substantial amount of time, that the Capitals blue line was really trying to dig deep. And players in that season, Gustafsson and different players, they stepped up and played a big role. I think the Capitals are more well-equipped to handle a situation, say a John Carlson got injured and missed a substantial amount of time, or a Chychrun, or one of these, future and current big pieces on the team. I don't want to put Chychrun in that category, as well, as we haven't even played the first game, but I think that Chychrun will eat up a lot of minutes, and John Carlson. But if one of those key defenders does get injured, the Capitals are in a much better position now than just even a couple of years ago. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about questions and the future in net for the Capitals. I'll discuss coming up. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And that's what's frustrating. When my favorite band comes to town, my favorite comedian, whatever the case, it's hard to find tickets. And if you do find tickets, what is the view going to be like of the stage or the field from where I'm playing? So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day talking about my favorite position. I got to say, it's my favorite position is the net-minding position and the future for the Capitals. We know that this year it is going to be Logan Thompson. It is going to be Charlie Lindgren. But what about after that? It's a unique position for the Capitals to be in, is Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson are both entering into contract years. And guess what? It gets a little bit deeper than that. So is Hunter Shepard. So the Capitals netminding could look a lot different, markedly different in the years to come. And I ultimately think that the Capitals will give one of those netminders an extension. I don't really see a scenario where Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson both get an extension. I think who stands out the most gets the deal, and that's kind of a no-brainer, right? And it's much too early for me to guess on who that might be, as we have seen some really great play from Logan Thompson. And Charlie Lindgren was lights out last season. Let the best man win, I say. And as far as Hunter Shepard is concerned, even though I have high hopes, I have dreams, I have big dreams for Hunter Shepard myself, it does appear that he is kind of just going to be that AHL netminder. There's been opportunities for him to get scooped up. There's been opportunities that I thought he would get traded, and yet here he still is in the AHL for the Hershey Bears. Not a bad thing. Still playing professional hockey. I think it's just a part of his career of understanding this is where I'm at, and maybe a bigger opportunity will come along, and maybe it'll be with the Capitals, and maybe it won't, but I am going to make the most of this opportunity. So the theme of this show is about the future. Who is the future in net for the Capitals? I really do think it's going to be Clay Stevenson. He is a bigger netminder, kind of the direction that the league's going in, with taller netminders. He moves better in the crease and is younger. That I think that he is going to be the future in net. So my hunch, looking into my crystal ball, is I think that it's going to be Logan Thompson or Charlie Lindgren. Both of those netminders will not be back next season, and then it'll be Clay Stevenson as number 2. And it gets a little bit deeper than that. I think that if the Capitals in the net, in the goalie department, if they face any type of injury, which at some point I think is inevitable, that I think that they will want to take a nice long look at Clay Stevenson to say, hey, what do we have in this netminder? On paper, I think we know what we have, and I know what we have in him down in Hershey, but what do we have on the big team, the Capitals? It's interesting that last season that Hunter Shepard was the guy that had the most activity. When one of the netminders got injured, it was Hunter Shepard up. I'm kind of wondering why it wasn't Clay Stevenson a little bit more. In any event, I think that this season will be the season for Clay Stevenson. If and when injuries rear their ugly head, I think that the Capitals will want to get a good look at him to see if, in fact, he is the long-term answer. For me, I think he is. And it's not just the 4 netminders that I mentioned. The pipeline is jam-packed in net for the Capitals for years to come. That I have no issues, I have no worries in net for the Capitals, as they always knock it out of the park in the netminding department. But it is going to be an interesting storyline to follow this season, is who's going to get a lion's share of the duty, of the workload out there. I do think that it will be Charlie Lindgren, at least to start the season. I think that he earned that based on his play last season. But at some point, once it all kind of levels out a little bit and we kind of get into the season, about the quarter point of the season, we're going to see which netminder is the better netminder. But we don't necessarily have to adhere to the old rules or the old thought process of we got to ride the hot hand, right? I think that they will try to split that workload up a little bit so that if the Capitals do make it to the playoffs, that one netminder isn't totally gassed, and they'll both be refreshed and ready to go going into next season. That is my hunch. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, but that is what I see. I see Clay Stevenson being that long-term answer in net, and I just want to get a look on the big stage to kind of reinforce my thought process to see if, in fact, that is the case. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. It is a long gap, isn't it, between the last preseason game and the first game of the season? There's hockey going on all over the NHL, and the Capitals are like, hey, here we are just kind of having practice here and not there. And it's kind of the dog days this week in between that it's a little bit tough for Capitals fans to kind of sink their teeth into it. And I'm glad that you followed me along here on Locked On Capitals. And thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.